My daughter used to call me every Sunday. Didn't matter if she was in college, working late shifts, traveling, she always made time for that call. We'd talk about everything. What she cooked that week, the dog she saw on the street, a weird dream she had. She told me everything. I was the first person she called when she got accepted to grad school, the first one she called when she got promoted. I was her go-to, her cheerleader, her soft place to land. Or at least, I thought I was. The shift started when she got serious with that guy. His name's Kyle. I remember the first time she brought him home for dinner. He didn't even look me in the eye, barely said a word unless she nudged him. He kept scrolling on his phone while we were eating. When I tried to ask him questions, basic stuff like what he did for work or what his folks were like, he gave me short answers, didn't ask anything back. I figured maybe he was just nervous or shy. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, if she liked him, that was good enough for me, for a while. But the longer they were together, the more distant she got. The calls stopped being every Sunday. Then it was once a month. Then once every few months. I'd leave voicemails, send texts. Most of the time, no reply. When she did respond, it was short. Hey Dad, been busy. We'll call soon. But she never did. I tried not to take it personally. I told myself she was building her life, that I had raised an independent woman, that this was a good thing. But deep down, something didn't sit right. It wasn't just distance. It was like she was shutting the door, quietly, gently, but firmly. I didn't want to believe it. Not until the wedding. That's when it became undeniable. I wasn't invited. Let me say that again, just so it sinks in. I wasn't invited to my own daughter's wedding. No save the date. No phone call. No explanation. I found out through a photo someone tagged her in on social media. There she was, in a white dress, standing next to Kyle, smiling under a flower arch. And me? I was sitting in my living room that day, thinking maybe she was just behind on planning. I waited weeks before I finally reached out and asked her, gently, if the wedding had already happened. She replied a day later with, "We kept it small. Just a few people. It was kind of last minute." That was it. No apology. No regret. Just a short message that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't even know what to say. I just stared at the screen for a long time, feeling something in my chest go quiet, like a door closing, softly, but forever. After that, I stopped reaching out. I didn't want to chase her. I didn't want to beg for a seat at a table that no longer had room for me. Months went by. Then a year. I kept living. Quietly. I still walked to the coffee shop every morning. Still trimmed the hedges out front. Still checked the mail every afternoon. But Sundays, they were the hardest. The silence was loud. And then, the call came. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to pick up. "Hey, Dad," she said, like no time had passed. Her voice was tight, nervous. I could hear a baby crying faintly in the background. I know it's been a while, and I know I haven't been the best at keeping in touch. I didn't say anything. Just listened. She went on, stumbling through small talk, asking how I was, if I was still in the same house. And then, she asked, I was wondering if maybe you could help out for a few days with the baby. Our sitter canceled and Kyle's parents are out of town, and I know it's a lot to ask, but we really need someone we can trust. I sat there, frozen, after all the silence, all the birthdays missed, all the holidays spent alone. Now she needed me? As a babysitter? I didn't say yes. Not right away. Truth is, I wasn't even sure how I felt. Part of me was angry, hurt. Another part still loved her, still missed her, still wanted to be there, even if it was only because she had no one else. I didn't answer her right away. After that call, I just sat there with the phone in my hand, heart racing, mind spinning. She wanted me to babysit, not to talk, not to reconnect, just babysit. It stung. I won't lie. I slept on it that night. Didn't call her back. Didn't text. Just laid in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about how I used to rock her to sleep when she had nightmares. How I made her pancakes in the shape of hearts when she lost her first tooth. How I walked her down the driveway the day she left for college, fighting back tears. And now she was asking for a favor like we hadn't been strangers for over a year. The next morning, I got up early and made coffee, stared out the window like I always do, and somehow, despite everything, I found myself saying yes. Not because I owed her, not because I forgot the pain, but because a part of me, the dad part, still wanted to be useful, still wanted to matter. She sounded surprised when I called back. Grateful, but also guarded. She gave me the address. Said it would only be for a few hours each day while they were at work. He's a good baby, she said. Mostly naps. I showed up that Monday morning. I wore a clean shirt, combed my hair, even brought a small stuffed bear I'd bought last minute. Something in me wanted to make a good first impression on my grandson. She opened the door slowly. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. She looked tired. Older than I remembered. "Hey, Dad," she said. Just those two words. Then she stepped aside and let me in. The house was modern, clean, but cold. No family photos, no sign of me anywhere. I stood awkwardly in the entryway until she motioned toward the living room. The baby was in a bouncer, kicking his little legs, staring up at the ceiling fan like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. He was smaller than I expected. Round cheeks, big eyes, tiny fingers. "This is Caleb," she said. "He's almost 7 months." I stepped closer. He looked at me, curious but calm. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the bear, and offered it. His fingers wrapped around it like he already knew it belonged to him. "Hey there, little man," I whispered. "I'm your grandpa." My daughter watched silently. There was this heaviness in the air, like both of us wanted to say something, but neither of us knew where to begin. She gave me a quick rundown where the bottles were, how he liked to be held, the emergency numbers on the fridge. It all felt professional, like I was being interviewed for a job I hadn't even applied for. Then she grabbed her keys, said, "We'll be back by 5, and left. Just like that. The door clicked shut. I looked down at Caleb. He looked back at me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something inside me soften. He didn't know anything about the silence, about the wedding, about the years lost. To him, I was just a new face, a warm pair of hands. I held him close, walked him around the room, humming the same tune I used to sing to his mother. He smiled, and I'll be honest, I almost cried. The day went by quietly. He napped. I watched him breathe. I read a few books out loud just to hear the sound of my own voice in a room that had been silent for too long. When she got home, she seemed surprised. "He's already asleep?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "We had a good day." She paused, then added, "Thanks for coming." I nodded. "Of course." That's all we said. But something shifted. Something small, like the tiniest crack in a wall that had been sealed tight. I came back the next day, and the next. Same routine. Feedings, diapers, naps. But also little moments. Caleb giggling when I made silly faces. Reaching for my finger. Resting his head on my chest. And slowly, my daughter started lingering a little longer before leaving. Asking if I wanted coffee. Sitting with me for 5 minutes before rushing out the door. We didn't talk about the past. Not yet, but the silence between us was starting to feel less sharp. Less heavy, more like waiting for the right moment. One afternoon, as she was about to leave, she stopped at the door and said, "He really likes you, you know." I smiled. "I like him too." She hesitated, looked down, then said quietly, "I wasn't sure if you'd say yes." After everything, I looked at her, and for a moment I saw that little girl again, the one who used to hug my leg and beg me not to leave for work. "You're still my daughter," I said. That never changed. Her eyes watered, just a little, but she nodded. Then she left, and I sat there, holding Caleb, heart full of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. It had been almost 3 weeks since I started coming by to watch Caleb. Every morning, same time. I'd knock. She'd open the door with her hair still damp from the shower, coffee in hand, sometimes looking tired, sometimes just softer. We started talking more, not about the big things. Not yet, but the small ones. What time Caleb had his last bottle, whether she should try switching to solids, how Kyle had started coming home later than usual, just bits and pieces, like puzzle pieces being slid back onto the table after being swept away. And I listened. I listened the way I always used to when she was a little girl rambling about school and friends and things that felt big to her. One morning, she came out of the nursery as I was burping Caleb on my shoulder and said, "Do you want to stay for dinner tonight?" I looked up, a little surprised. She noticed. "I mean, if you're not busy." I wasn't. Of course I wasn't. My evenings were quiet. Same chair, same meals, same television shows I didn't really care about. I'd like that. That night was simple. Just pasta and garlic bread, and a bit of awkward silence between bites. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It just felt like we were both trying to remember how to talk again. At one point, she looked up and said, "You used to make spaghetti every Friday night when I was a kid, with meatballs the size of golf balls." I laughed. "You used to complain they were too big to fit in your mouth." She smiled. "I always ate them anyway." The room went quiet again. Not because we had nothing to say, but because we both knew what was sitting there. Unspoken. And finally, I said it. "Why didn't you invite me to the wedding?" Her fork froze midair. She looked down, took a deep breath. "I was angry," she said. "About what?" I asked, though I already had guesses. She sighed. "You didn't like Kyle. You were cold with him. Judged him from day one." I wanted to argue. To say I tried. That he never gave me anything to work with. But instead, I said, maybe I didn't try hard enough. She looked at me then, eyes a little red. And maybe I didn't either. I was young and stubborn, and I thought you were trying to control me. So I pulled away. I thought, if I just kept some distance, maybe it would be easier. Simpler. Simpler, I echoed. "Is that what it felt like?" She shook her head. Not really. I missed you. I just didn't know how to come back from it. Especially after the wedding. It felt too far gone. "It's never too far," I said, "unless one of us decides to stop walking." She didn't answer, but her eyes did. That night, after Caleb was asleep, I got up to leave. She walked me to the door. Just before I stepped outside, she touched my arm. "Thank you," she said, "for still showing up." I nodded. That's what dads do. The weeks turned into months. I became part of their routine. Caleb started recognizing me before I even stepped inside, arms reaching up, big gummy smile. My daughter called more. Sometimes just to talk. Sometimes just to ask for advice she'd never admit she needed. And one afternoon, out of nowhere, she said, "I want you in his life, Dad. Not just for babysitting. I want him to know who you are. What kind of man raised me." I didn't know what to say. I just reached for her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. That was enough. Then came Christmas. She invited me officially for the first time in years. Said she wanted to do it right. Kyle was there. still a little quiet, but more relaxed around me now. We shook hands, shared a drink, even talked about baseball. At the dinner table, she stood up with a glass in her hand and said, "I just want to thank my dad for being patient with me, for not giving up when I disappeared, for loving me even when I didn't know how to love back." I didn't cry, not in front of everyone, but something broke open in me that night. Not the kind that hurts, the kind that heals. Later, after dessert, I was rocking Caleb near the tree, lights blinking soft colors across the walls. She came over, sat on the armrest of my chair, and laid her head gently on my shoulder, just like she used to do when she was little. No words, just presence. Warm, steady, real. And I thought to myself, sometimes love doesn't come back the way you expect. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it gets messy. But if you leave the porch light on long enough, eventually, they find their way home.